Okay, so Carolyn's made a good point on this, but we spent a fair amount of time. Folks, I don't know, maybe we should do a quick hands up. Is it time to move on, you think? Yeah, okay, great. So let's do that. Let's move on and talk about the next part of this model then. Okay, so good stuff. I think we've covered most of that module. Nick, maybe in your own words, can you summarize sort of what you took as the main things we've got to do next then?
Basically what we got to do, I think, is develop a CD cover, front and back, and then move on to the CD itself and some of the artwork on that.
Okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome, thanks.
On my job shadow on Saturday, I followed Paul all the way to Toronto, and he basically went over all the techniques he was using and the different sales approaches and the technical calls and the stuff that he goes through in a day.
Melissa, hang on just for 1 sec. Thanks for that. Carolyn, anything to add to that what she was saying earlier?
No, not really. My job shadowing was really educational too.
Great.
So me and my sales shadow person, on our way to go to our possible client,
Right.
we went to go get a coffee to set the mood for the whole sales. My coffee had way too much cream in it, and I don't think the coffee we got for our client was too good as well.
Right, right.
So,
Moving just away from the coffee just for a second, let's take it back to the job shadow. What was the key thing that you found that really sort of helped you be successful with that? So what's the most important thing then, folks, in terms of the job shadow experience? Jen?
Building a relationship with the client.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the number one thing. No matter what, we always have to remember that when we're out in that experience itself. Awesome. Okay, so guys, great conversation about job shadowing and some of the key things that need to be done. Nick's made a phenomenal point and a number of points actually about this. Can I get a few more points though before we start to move on and go into another topic? Melissa?
I think networking is very important.
Yeah, critical, critical. Karen?
Determine the client's needs.
Yeah, it's got to be. That's probably one of the most important things. I think Nick had mentioned that earlier. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Okay, so really the important part of this whole model, the form, storm, norm, and perform, really the most important part of this is the most important part that I was saying was so Corinne, what do you think then is probably the major considerations you have to take into account when you're doing the CD cover?
I think you have to take into consideration the themes that bands typically use in their music.
Yeah, for sure. Other people agree with that? All right, so if you remember then guys, the main parts of that whole team development model is the form, the norm, storm, and perform. And it's really critical that especially when we look at this, when we apply it to project teams, that becomes really noticeable.
So when you're doing an apology letter, you just have to make sure that you mention the company's name so they're personalized, then you just say sorry at the end.
Right. Jasmine, anything else you'd add to that?
And you can never put the blame on someone else. It's always got to be like the company's blame. But you always have to say sorry at the end.
Right. And that's a critical part of when you're sort of dealing in that PR environment, that you keep both of those points in mind for sure.
So when you're writing an apology letter, you have to make sure that you mention the company's name and specifics, and you have to make sure that you're apologizing and...
Right. Sorry, Jasmine, would you tend to agree with that? Something you can add?
Yep, I agree totally. You just have to make sure you never put the blame on someone else. You always keep it to the company and you apologize at the end.
Right.
Okay, well, there's a difference between a portfolio and a scrapbook. A portfolio should be cleaner, crisper, more polished, while a scrapbook you can influence your creativity and kind of be everywhere you want.
Okay. Corey, in your own words, what's Will saying?
Basically what Will's going at is portfolios are supposed to be clean and professional, and scrapbooks we can just kind of be as messy as we really want to be.
Right. Good stuff. So Corinne, I think if I hear you correctly, you were saying that really the number one consideration when doing that initial sales call is building rapport with the client. Would that be correct?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. What else do we have to think about, folks, in terms of building rapport early with the client and making that sale? So we've talked about a lot of good stuff this afternoon, and so what I'd like to do is maybe get some summary of some of the key things we've done. And Jasmine, you've had a lot of really good input this afternoon, so maybe if I could just ask this side of the class then to get what you would think would be the summary of the most important parts of this whole project management approach that we've talked about today. So I know, Corinne, we talked about doing a job well or doing it on time. I know you kind of lean towards doing the job well versus on time, but let's say you had to convince Will that timeliness was important. How would you do that? Actually, why don't you do that like in a little role play?
Well, in a real life situation, often if you're at a job, they need something done within a specific time frame, and if you don't get it done within that time frame, you don't get the job.
Well, time, I mean, it's a good thing, but isn't it getting it done like well and on time? Is that not what it's supposed to happen?
Although that's great when we talk about it in the classroom, in the real world though, really the client has very specific expectations, which may or may not include time, but usually what's more important is the quality more than the time, to be honest.